All right. We are up and running finally. This is taking a little bit longer than I'd expected. Okay, let's see. Let's just see where this gets us. Hey guys, welcome. I'm just trying to get my live chat up on the software that I'm using. Okay, well that might not work. I guess I'm just gonna have to jump in between here. You guys can hear me. If anyone here is here on the stream yet, let me know. Anyone can help me do a stream check, folks. Is my audio working? Awesome. Okay, cool. It's good. So out of all the things I decided to do before I dove into I was like, oh, well, I'm gonna do a stream later. And then I was like, oh, well, I should just make a presentation for said stream. And then I was like, well, that's kind of overkill. And I was like, well, then I'm gonna have to get OBS up and running. And then so the motivation to do a stream kind of motivated me into a vortex of other craziness. So as long as audio is good, hold on, let's see if this works. Did it change? I'm sorry. Oh, it did. All right, cool. New things. All right. So how are you guys? I'm just going to hang out here on the chat for a second before we get into some stuff. So how is everyone on the chat? Welcome. You can see the slide. Okay, cool. Yeah. Kind of just, how many slides did I end up making? Let's see. And they're not serious. You know, it's not like we're trying to present on the most serious topic ever. But I kind of just wanted to play around with having a visual, then also forcing myself to have to get better at using OBS because good skill to have. Okay, cool. Awesome. So how are you guys? Welcome to the LiJo stream. We're going to be talking about poker personality, the perfect ecosystem, which is, I found to be people when they are trying to make decisions. We're really forced to see ourselves in a different way. The people who are able to see themselves, acknowledge and learn and grow are the ones, ironically, that end up doing better than most. The ones who refuse to acknowledge their own self, their shadow, the parts of themselves that really challenge sometimes how we're default wired to behave and think and see things, those are the ones that struggle the most. So I can't help but get this this topic kind of out of my head just because of how clear it is when all the pieces come together at the end of the day, especially in the poker room, where again, why is it's kind of like the perfect ecosystem to study personality type, because when we're making decisions, one, we're having to use our cognitive process to make said decision. So you can kind of see the steps that someone's going through, but also the side of having pressure, the side of having something to lose is so key. Like, I wish I could like in a in a typing assignment, something like that, I wish I could press everyone into that ecosystem where they're in a state of afraid to lose something, right? Or they're challenged in some way, or they have kind of like a state of fear, but not, I don't want people to be necessarily scared, but so have something to lose, forced into a decision, or having to make a decision, and the ability to see that process is just very clear and easier to see than most. So cool. I'm just gonna hop into some of the things I've been thinking about, then I'll check back in on the chat as we kind of go. But yeah, so ta-da! Let's continue to move forward. Oh shoot, can I change the slide though if I'm in this view? I don't know if I can. I can in this view. Interesting. Okay. So until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate. Carl Jung. One of my favorite Carl Jung quotes by far. It really captures how we project, how we build our own perception, and also how we build our own triggers into our lives and say it was that thing, or we'll kind of avoid responsibility in some way, even if the experience we're living is very real. Kind of just a manifestation of this. Oh gosh, why can't I'm sorry. You're gonna have to watch me like mess around with the things a little bit, because I don't know why I can't change the slide without flipping back and forth. So, okay. So, question for you guys. Have you ever felt like your reactions in a higher pressure, higher stakes situation revealed something about yourself that surprised you? So, it can be any kind of situation. Maybe give me some context, if you can, of what a situation might be where you learn something about yourself because the pressure was on. That's what I'm interested in hearing about. Yeah, totally, Adam. I couldn't agree more. So for myself, I'm trying to think of a really like higher stakes situation, but that's not poker. So when there's a few situations where I had to like, I wrote, produced, and directed it was an 8-part like YouTube series for a different channel where we're using a live band. It was almost like an SNL sort of a, we had a host, we had a person who was in the chair being like interviewed. We had a live band that we were cutting to, and we were recording all 8 episodes back to back because I had a very limited budget and I had to get the entire, I had to get all the segments filmed and like not go over long because we couldn't really pay the band longer. And so it was like a very fine-tuned directing, writing, producing project. I probably went overboard on the amount of monitors and screens I had up behind me that the people on stage could see that everyone else when we were filming couldn't see. But that was definitely a higher stakes situation. One, because there was a lot of money on the line in terms of what the business was trying to accomplish and get done. And there's a lot of people just not wanting their time to be wasted, and I don't want to waste people's time. So I think in that situation, it definitely showed me how default controlling I can be, because, and I think in this particular situation, it was for my benefit, but it was I had rehearsed myself through the whole process from beginning to end through all the 8 segments, just so that when the filming actually occurred, I wasn't getting lost, and if people were looking to me to direct the orchestration, you could say, of all these parts, I didn't want to, let them down. I didn't want to waste time. And I wanted to get the thing done, and I wanted to get it done well. So after that, I remember a lot of people kind of coming up to me and being like, wow, that was you really had everything planned so well. Did you guys do lots of work? They were asking if we did lots of rehearsals before we filmed it. And I was like, no, this was like the one time we did it. We did everything beginning to end, one shot. But I rehearsed it, like I rehearsed basically directing the whole thing just so that I could be able to move through it easily. So it revealed that part of me, I guess, like more clearly than I had realized before. Luckily, there was no like big sensory mishaps, except for the fact that we couldn't find an adapter to one of the cameras like last minute. But that I can't say that was totally my responsibility either. And yeah, it just kind of showed me, I guess, like the feedback is really what showed me what some of what I was doing as a default that I guess maybe not everyone else's. So, hello. All right. If you guys have anything to add to that, have you felt like your reactions in a high stakes situation revealed something about you that surprised you? I guess I wasn't that surprised in my example that I just gave. But it definitely was apparent, I guess you could say. All right, I'm going to just keep rolling on through these and then we'll continue to go from there. All right, sorry, I have to kind of, guys, I'm learning OBS on the way, more or less. I kind of forced myself to do it this way. So we're going to talk about the shadow a little bit. So actually, let me go to, I skipped one slide. So no one can become conscious of the shadow without considerable moral effort. I just say like considerable effort. And so why is there effort required in addressing the shadow of a person? This is not something we've really talked about much on my channel, but I really want to talk about it a bit more. So the shadow includes repressed traits, like things that we're kind of pushing down. And those can manifest as like fears or desires or the parts of ourselves that we often don't believe are really permissible, or they're taboo, or we're not sure how to really dip our toe into it or not, and it doesn't feel like allowed or permitted in some way. A lot of times related to our lower two functions, and oftentimes our last function. And Carl Jung's pursuit in talking about the shadow is really because without integrating that shadow into us as like the whole, we're missing a significant part of ourselves. And as I mentioned earlier, this is really evident when it comes to playing poker, because if someone is very, let's just say, very unintegrated, right? Those fears, those repressed traits, a lot of times they often come up as triggers in the game. And during the game, of course, what's the stake is money. There's money to be lost, right? And so there's a very clear delineation of, sometimes luck just isn't in your favor, but a lot of times what contributes to either luck not being in your favor or also you just playing poorly is really kind of like this other side of our cognitive stack that will end up triggering us or bringing up things that are hard to look at. And a lot of people don't necessarily want to look at. Let's see. Okay. Hey, guys. So continuing on. We're already just there. Okay. So when the shadow is at work doing what it does best, you see it as triggers, like I just said, defensiveness, projecting onto others, and then like our just overall behavior being influenced as a result. So we're acting like ourselves, but also we're acting as the unintegrated part of ourselves. So the triggered version, the Karen version, the pissed off version, the version that is harder to be around for ourselves and for others a lot of times. And so what does all that mean, right? So, oh wait, I'm over my words. Can I fix that? Oops. Now I messed something up. No, I didn't. There we go. Sorry. Uh, oh, shoot. Well, hold on. Are we still going? Okay, we're still going. Wow, that was crazy. All right. Okay. So back at it. Sorry guys for that one falling off the rails a second ago. Where are we? Okay. Can I get back to Yes, I can. Let me skip back to the slide that we were just at. All right. Okay, sorry guys. I keep kind of losing my input over here. Not my favorite, but we're still doing our best. So the question that I had for you guys was the following. So, do you think that competition brings out the best or the worst in people? And why is that? Any kind of context you can bring into it. I think that, hey guys, what's up? So, I think that competition can bring out the best and the worst in people. Yeah, exactly. Look at War. I think it does bring out the best and the worst in people because of the fact that you have the ability to either rise to the occasion or you have the ability to absolutely crumble by its fingertips. Um, and also, there's a lot of people who just rather not do either. So you have people who will avoid competition just surely because it's like, in a lot of ways, there is an element of performance that's involved with competition. Um, because there wouldn't be a competition if it didn't involve some other entity that was being competed against, and that in itself um, kind of brings it to an observation level where it is like a performance in some fashion. So some people would rather just avoid it. I think that it brings out, both the best and the worst. Um, and moving on with that one, so how do we exploit it? So the shadow is okay. On one side, it is a place that is exploitable, right? So when you identify the elements of someone else's shadow, aka their parts of their weakness or unintegrated parts of their cognitive stack that are causing them to be triggered, this is an easy place to exploit. And it is a place that a lot of people are exploited, whether it's in some, and I'm talking like in a very competitive sense, right? Where you're trying to get an edge, one up someone. So in that sense, it is easy to find that and exploit that in a particular. Now, if it was a sport, I think the exploits are less because there's decisions that are being made. But the decision process, I think, is more limited in sports. Like a sport would be like more action oriented, though there's decisions, of course, involved. But when you're talking, like when you're looking at something that's requiring a multi-step process and thought, that's where the cognitive exploits, I think, really come into play. This could maybe even be a debate. This could even be, I was thinking about this the other day, like lawyers, if someone's in litigation, if you know who you're litigating against, this could be something that's used, and I'm sure is used actually. In poker, it's very used. So some of the fun ones behind this are okay, so you have people who have thing problems and people problems, right? Self and tribe issues. So the IPs and the EJs tend to fall along the lines of the self and tribe issues, and the EPs and the IJs tend to fall in the thing problems, right? And so one thing that you'll see commonly at the poker table is if there is someone who's easily triggered by people and or self and tribe related conversation, you'll often, so let's just like, for instance, it's an IP, right? Or an EJ, but let's just say it's an IP because they're a little bit spicier. So let's say it's an IP and there's some EP, for instance, who doesn't really struggle with self and tribe issues. Their issues are more with things, with the control and chaos issues, which has its own set of exploits. But for the sake of this exercise, the EP has realized that the IP can get rather triggered when comments are made about their IP identity, right? And so what you'll see manifest oftentimes is just those little pokes and jabs by one party, where if those pokes and jabs were to come back at them, it really wouldn't be relevant. Like they would kind of just brush them off and move on. But because they're directing them at someone who is a single decider, so an IP or an EJ, right? The person is slowly but surely becoming triggered with that unintegrated part of their cognition, right? That shadow, the triggering part, the fears, the stuff about us that's hard to look at. So what will often happen is they'll make some kind of comment about the player or how they're playing, and maybe nothing is said at first by the other person, but slowly the pissed off level of the other person will increase until, before you know it, usually what happens is they either will leave, so they'll switch a table, or they'll leave the facility, or they'll end up, punting all their chips. Their money will go somewhere else to maybe that player like he was hoping, but it's a very, like, there's not many other outcomes to the situation. And once you realize there's very few outcomes in a certain game, or in a certain competitive setting, you start to realize how important it is that the shadow is at least acknowledged, and at least, like, even if you don't have the ability to like completely flex it and use it in its positive ways yet, at least that you're aware, so that you're not doing something that is not benefiting you, right? Because at the end of the day, hold on, bro, you're not even good at this game. Or did you learn this 5 minutes ago? Yes, exactly, right? That would totally be one. For another one that what really gets to people is basically saying like they're playing too tight, or they're playing in a certain style that like the other people don't want at the table, right? And at the end of the day, it's like, okay, yeah, people can do whatever the hell they want. Like, it's a public game. Indy, please don't squeak the squeaker this whole time. It's a public game. Everyone's paying the blinds. You can sit there and fold for 3 hours, and honestly, that's your right. So it's not up to anyone to say anything, but people will, and that's one really triggering thing, especially for especially the EJs will tend to kind of go along with it, because they'll be like, they'll adjust because the tribe is dictating something and they want to fit in kind of like in that groove. And even if they don't have to, the IPs will take the route of more resistance and just kind of usually get a little bit more pissed about the situation. So if you're hearing sounds, that's Indy squeaking a squeaker and playing with a toy. So people will interpret that its ways. And so, yeah, like I was saying, there's very few outcomes when you start to look at this as the game in the particular situation that it is. And it's like, okay, so when it comes to this whole shadow work thing, why would I not do something that would benefit me? Like, why would I not do something? Why would I at least be unwilling to acknowledge parts of myself that if it comes down to it, in a higher stakes situation, in a situation where you have more on the line, why wouldn't I want to choose the route that benefits me more? So I think I have another question for you guys here. Oh yeah. So one question here is, it's like, why, like if you're in a situation that's particularly triggering to you, is to ask yourself the question, why does this bother me so much? Right? And because it's actually healthy on two levels. On one, you're acknowledging the fact that you are in fact bothered. And that takes like a whole half a person. It takes like 50% of a person just to be able to say that this bothers me legitimately versus like completely bypassing it as irrelevant. So, asking yourself, why does this bother me so much? And then the other part of that is then to be, what can I learn from this, right? So, according to Jung, know your own darkness is the best method for dealing with the darkness in other people, right? And so, if you can't see it in yourself, you're probably not seeing it in other people either, or you're twisting the perception of it in other people according to what you're still trying to figure out about yourself. So one of the best exploits to exploiting the cognitive process of others in a competitive setting is to first exploit yourself and figure out the voids that you're leaving in your own circumstances. For myself, those were definitely, so I have in my cognitive stack, I have NI first, and I'm so sorry about the squeaker, but I just can't even. If I take it away, it's going to become a game, and that gets worse. So in my own cognitive stack, I have NI first, right, and I have SC, extroverted sensing, last. And so, how does this manifest for me? Well, it's missing some vital part of sensory, especially we'll just use the game of poker as an example. It would be missing some piece of sensory because I'm skipping ahead too much in my own cognitive process, and I'm disrespecting the actual physical information sometimes right in front of me. And when you're playing a missing information game, we compare poker to chess, right? So chess is not a missing information game. Chess, you have all of the information on the board in front of you related to what is currently happening in that game. Poker is a missing information game. There's some hidden pieces of information, right? So any information you can get in a particular situation is extremely important. And one thing that I would tend to do, and I've really been rigorous on my own self to remember kind of like my mental checklist of things I have to be aware of. But I would miss pieces of information that would cost me to lose a hand because it was right in front of me, and for whatever reason, I just moved right past it, didn't even acknowledge it, didn't even see it. And so that's something that would be harder to identify maybe in a game, to know that that's why someone may have lost a hand. But, it would probably be apparent if you studied me in that setting for like a longer time. Again, but one of the things was like I made a conscious effort to say like, okay, I'm creating a process for myself to which I will now be aware of the sensory and different parts of it and things to go back and reflect on as a result after. Actually, writing down my hands was a huge one because it forced me to. I know I had to do certain things to be able to write out this hand history, and so I had to be aware of them in the moment so that I could write them down later to review later. So that was important for me. Let me check in on this chat. Yeah, another way to ask is, when did I first feel this way, and what happened when, and identifying with that feeling. Yeah, for an EP, a comment might be, you played that. Oh, you used that play 5 times. You sure are. Yeah, totally. So So yeah, you could exploit the fact for like I totally get what you're saying. With an EP, you could say that they're being too repetitive, which would be a huge trigger. Because they're savior chaos, right? So if they're not kind of doing what they feel like is if they feel like they're, I feel like one for EPs would be, well, one place where you can get EPs in the game of poker would be just time, because if you're having to play the right way for a longer period of time, their boredom's going to kick in a lot of times, and then they're just kind of want to do what they want to do, you know. And so time is a big factor. Just consistency is a big factor for the EPs. But yeah, you definitely called them out on not doing their chaos thing enough, and that would, I'm sure, hit. Sorry, I've been talking a lot. Okay. Do you guys have any situations where, Indy, please, no more squeakers. Do you guys have any situations where you've been up against something and a trigger has very visibly come to manifest for yourself? What was that situation? I'm interested. Like the situation, maybe it's something recent that you can look back on and you're like, dang, like that, even if you didn't say anything, even if you held yourself in the situation in a very poised and, you know, presidential way, if you will, if you felt on the inside that blood boiling feeling, that feeling of like, this is the worst, right? Often correlated with a trigger of some sorts. I was talking about this one the other day to someone, which is like one thing that will, even with all the self-growth I've done, one thing that will consistently trigger me, and it sounds silly, but I can't get past my physical reaction of it, is like putting pasta into the boiling water. Like, God forbid it's like a vegan tortellini, you know, like hot, like something in the hot water where the hot water is likely to like come out. But like if you go too far away, then it just makes the splash bigger. Still get the most like triggered physical reaction of like freaking out when I like put pasta in the hot pot. And like I know there's techniques you can do with like the spoon lowering and whatever. I don't have the patience to be there yet, but whenever you do the dishes, but you just want to go consume some videos instead. Yeah. Yep. Totally hijacked. Yeah, so like with the dishes, but you just want to go like consume some videos instead. Is it coming from like a forced control, the triggering feeling, like I have to do this, I have to narrow myself into this box, but I guess you could just say like the denying of the savers. Yeah, it's kind of like when you're forced into your last function a lot of times. Yeah. Yeah, you haven't do it to have dishes at all. I feel that. How do you feel about the like do it as you go method? Is that more or less triggering? I have heard, is to me like I like who wants to do dishes? I'm totally with you. But for me, it's like I don't want to have the perception of ever feeling like I have to do dishes. So like if I just wash everything immediately after, then I never like see them sitting there waiting for me, and like that's the feeling that really triggers me. Is like the chaos that's looming in some like area, you know. All right, let's keep rolling with this thing. All right. So I think sometimes when it comes to working on your shadow / your lower functions, there's this perception that you're gonna lose like the benefits of your savior functions and like the parts of you that are, default uh, really good at stuff. But that's just, it's not really the case because you can't stop yourself. Like, if there's an electrical circuit that has to come back around, right? And that circuit could work with the first and second nodes being lit up and then come back and make a loop. Or it could do 1, 2, and 3, or it could do 1, 2, 3, and 4. But 1 and 2 is the shortest circuit, right? So it's like, well, why wouldn't it do that, right? And so we'll just naturally bypass things if we can get by and survive with our core, our savior functions being lit up and activated. And then we'll only go to the third and the fourth one if we have to, if we have to push our energy that far to that level, because some reason calls for it. Now, the balance side is saying, well, you can actually create more light if you light up all 4 nodes, right? Because like if you just do it with 1 and 2, then you only have like 2 little like light bulbs lit up, right? But you're a whole person. So your whole person is capable of 4. So why would you not use all 4 if you can? Now, this is the thing. It's like if you're working on 3 and 4, those, we'll just call them the shadow, right? Or your demon functions. If you're working on 3 and 4, you still have to be going through 1 and 2 in the meantime to even get to that level. So you're never missing out on the saviors as you're working on the lower functions. Like they're always contributing somehow, some way into your default state that is then being conscious of another part of yourself and then applying itself there as well too. Yeah, totally. So yeah, how do you guys feel about that? What's your perspective been on working on your lower functions? Have you ever come across the thought or the perception of, well, am I going to lose the thing that I'm good at, or are you far past that in your own journey? Because it is one that comes up a lot. It's one that I've talked to people about often. It almost seems like the initial fear in some way is if someone's gotten, maybe it's a personality type that they resonate with or not, who cares? But at some point when it's like, oh, balance, working on these other parts, there's this feeling as if, I don't know, there's just some kind of like fear involved, it seems like sometimes. So, yeah, feel free to comment on that one if you're feeling like it. So, moving on. Shoot, my little pictures over the top of it. The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are. So, like, every time I get frustrated with I don't know if you want to call it the personality community, because in a lot of ways, being in a state in life where you're able to think about your personality and how that can contribute to your ideal career or your relationship or your future goals, like there is an element of privilege that's inherently built in the ability to say, like, I have the time right now, I have the time and energy to consider what my personality is. So there's something about the personality community and space overall that I just absolutely hate. Because the fact is like theing through that full process from beginning to end, and like, the journey that a lot of us are still on to get to the other side is like, there's a lot of hardship and there's a lot of like downs as well as the ups. So it's like, when you see someone in this like I'm a happy personality type like place, it's kind of in its own way a little bit triggering, because it's like it's very much not real. And like I've had to kind of come to my own circle on the fact that, what, there's a lot worse things that someone could be doing than like studying personality type. So, you know, it's not a bad thing, right? But at the same time, there is like a privilege of energy and time and ability associated and kind of built in my own perspective. So, but with that, the real depth behind it and the real, I think, like work at the end of the day, and the real reason why any of this is worth any effort is, one, you get the benefit of things you can directly influence within your life that makes your life better. And if it's not making your life better now or in the future, it's not really worth doing, right? So you get to make things better for yourself, which is nice. The other thing is, like, you, like this Carl Jung quote says, is you have the privilege of a lifetime to become who you truly are. And that process, I think, is a lot of what makes life a beautiful journey, because we have this perception of who we are at some point earlier in life. And, you know, we think often it's kind of stuck in the persona stage of, you know, this is my persona. This is who I want the world to think that I am, and whatever. And then you have ego attached to that. And then it all gets absolutely viciously ruined at some point. And then you have the beauty of building in the other side that is kind of what makes it, the second part, fun and interesting. And, like, you know, you get to apply these other things to the other side of your brain that gives you greater depth, and it just brings a lot more color into a very superficial, I feel like, younger years, to balance it with the depth of like struggle and creation in, you know, mid to like in like older years, right? And so that's like the real privilege. So the times when I get frustrated with the privilege that's like associated with personality, I remember that the real privilege is, like Carl Jung says, is becoming who you truly are, which is a process and a journey. And you know, that's why I show up at the end of the day. So if you could address one recurring challenge in your personality, this is my last question, by the way, what would it be and why? So is there anything that you can identify in yourself, or your personality type? You can just make it more generic if you want overall, that you could address. Maybe you haven't yet. There's plenty of things I haven't addressed yet, but like they're in there. They're in the lottery bucket, or in like the raffle bucket of like, I'm gonna have to pick this out eventually. But sometimes it's just not yet. Yes. Yeah, I know. When people are like really unconscious, but they insist they're like the wisest person in their room. And I feel like there is like an age matrix with that, because I feel like it's really hard to kind of keep that mentality as you get older, because you, at some point, like, you will be humbled, you know, no matter who you are out there. Like, if it hasn't happened yet, like, it will. Like, you will be humbled. And if there's anyone in your life who you're like, man, this person has such an ego or such a whatever, and like they just kind of lived an easy life, it's like they will be humbled at some point, you know, like. And that's the thing of, you know, like, whether it be poker or life, is here's the real bread and butter, right? Everyone gets dealt, over the span of a lifetime, everyone gets dealt the same number of good hands and bad hands. So like, over the span of a lifetime, you know, my life compared to your life, we're all on average going to get dealt pocket aces around the same number of times, right? So why is it that some people like thrive in life and like some people don't? Like, why is it that, you know, some people like really like maximize parts of this experience and other people don't? Because it's like, at the end of the day, like, luck does factor in. Like, there's times where you can get dealt really bad cards and really bad situations back to back to back. But statistically, you're going to have to be dealt aces at some point, you know? And gosh, I did the math on this recently. With like in a live poker game, I think it's like once every 13 hours approximately, based on how fast the cards are being dealt out, is like you should be getting pocket aces around like one every 13 to 14 hours of live play. And so there's a lot of bad hands that can happen between, those aces, right? But at the end of the day, so if we're all dealt the same number of, on average, really, really good hands throughout a lifetime, how do the winning players win? And like one thing that I can say in poker that, I'm also working back to like apply in a life context, and I'm not quite there with it yet, is it's, the winning players in poker, it's not when they get dealt aces, like, and I'm using aces metaphorically, right? Like, it's not when they're dealt aces, like, because those hands are bound to happen at some point. You're going to get those slam dunks. Great. Everything worked out for you. Awesome. But it's like the small spots in between. Those are the spots that if you don't operate in like a unconscious way, if you're conscious about what you're doing, why you're there, what the objective is, and like you win small amounts in between those bigger spots, or you minimize losses, those are what make, at the end of a lifetime, the winning player versus the non-winning player. And it has, again, it's not the cards, it's the way that you're being conscious and aware of the situation. And some of the stuff that we talk about today applies to about, are you being triggered? Because a spot where you might have been able to minimize a loss and only lose, let's say, $50. Well, if you're getting all hot and bothered and triggered, now that's 350, 550, like whatever it is, depends on what the stakes are, right? And so it's those in-between spots that paint the dynamic of a person in a lifetime. And yeah. Yeah, it's hard to introspect and be accurate. Definitely. I mean, and I don't think it's always about being accurate. It's like a very TI thing to say. The introspection I see as just it's not a solution. It's just a habit that's kind of like, it's like if let's say you exercise every day and you eat well, right? And as a result, there's some lifestyle related illnesses that you never end up having. It's like, well, it kind of is the solution long term, but you don't see it as a solution because you're not necessarily like seeing the problem along with it, because like the act of doing the introspection is kind of the lifelong remedy, versus it having, so it doesn't have to be accurate, I guess is like what I'm saying. Because you don't even always know what it's going to be applied to. And even if you are wrong, it's like you find some kind of data point to then triangulate your perspective off of, to then maybe see a different side of yourself later, or like become more self-realized in your own view of yourself. So yeah, I think the introspection process is a good one. And it is kind of like a part of a, in quote, like healthy lifestyle, if you would. Yeah, endurance, shrugging off losses. Yeah, caring about the small stuff, caring about the one of the biggest things that you see a lot of people do in poker is like they'll call a bet just to see a flop, just to see a few hands, just to see some cards come out, right? And then if they don't hit that flop, then they're kind of out, right? But that could have been like, to call to see those cards come out, that could have been easily like $15, And it's like, okay, so $15 might not seem like that much, right? But if you do it 20 times within a session, which a lot of players will, that does, end up being a lot more money. It does end up being like actually a big hand or a bigger hand in terms of a loss. So those are where people will essentially just piss away money and not be able to ever kind of get into that winning state because they're not being conscious of, just like you said, the little things. And shrugging off losses is a huge one because, okay, so the infamous, that's what we call it in poker, the infamous, like when you get sucked out on, which means like you were ahead until the very end when you weren't, you know, and some of the player that you're in hand with hit a miracle and the luck randomization went in their favor, even though you were ahead the whole time, even though you were an equity favorite, right? And so that happens. It's a part of poker. And so, but that will really affect people mentally because all they see it as is, man, I did the right thing and I still lost. And that is very much parallel to life. Is there are times where you will do the right thing. You'll do everything right. Everything, like everything from the view of, you know, the most critical view of a situation you could be doing right. And you can still lose in that situation. And that's what's hard for people to shrug off. It's not the loss when like, you did something kind of dumb or you took a chance, right? And the chance didn't pay off, right? Maybe that was it. It's the times, the really hard times for people are when they did everything right. You know, maybe it was even like, you could even say like in a relationship or in a job, right? You can do sometimes in these things everything right and still not get the promotion, still not get the raise. Now there might be other things to work on in the meantime that might assist you in those things better. But overall, you can really like be the hardest worker, like doing everything the best that you can. And then just, you know, luck doesn't come in your favor that time around. And if you can learn how to walk yourself down from those heightened situations, that is the ultimate defense against a world where, you know, luck will not always be in your favor. And not letting it affect how you play your next hand, not letting it affect how you reconstruct your worldview, is vital. Because you see people like, let's say, for instance, like get hurt in a relationship and they're just like, well, I did all these things right. I was the best person. Like now screw it all, right? Like I'm going to take a totally like, and whatever, that's part of their journey. That's fine. But, you know, just because you lost in a particular situation doesn't mean that what you did was wrong. You know, sometimes you're actually the most right, and being able to objectively see that situation for what it is it's the nuts, as we like to say in poker. For SIs, you have to make habits so you show up even when you lost. Yeah, definitely. Yeah, SI will base a lot of stuff on like history. You know, they'll see that that historical timeline of what didn't go right, and then they could make future decisions based off those circumstances. That's a good shout. Yeah. So that's all I had to talk about today, guys. Do you guys have any questions or thoughts that you want to share with the class today? Yeah, SI could go back. SI is like, they're very actually, SI players are good for, they'll read like a good poker book. They'll read like Harrington on Hold'em or something like that. And they'll learn a lot of the historical truths and like still long-standing truths of the game, and they'll apply those very well. And they'll have like a very methodical application to it. What SI players don't always do the best is bluff. Or they'll have like a lot of telling signs when they're bluffing. And so as a result, I think a lot of them just kind of default to not bluffing. And yeah, but they're good at like applying a structure to the game for sure. Any other thoughts or questions, my friends? Drop them in the chat before Indy gets chased with all of his cute toys that he's brought in here during the stream. By the way, I love the fact that my chats, the comments in the chats, that you guys will use the functions instead of always like using type, like using the stereotypical 16 personality types, whatever, MBTI types. I much prefer to use the functions in any kind of conversation because to me, the level of accuracy is higher when you're just talking about the function because they really embody an archetype associated with one of the specific 16 personality types. Is like, you're not going to get it. It's much easier to talk about the 8 cognitive functions and the polarity between those in different positions than Myers-Briggs. So have fun surfing. God, what time is it wherever you are? It must be, actually, I don't know what time they need to be in. All right, guys. Well, it was nice hanging out with you. I'll see you in my next stream. I'll see you in my next video. I've been kind of coasting a little bit to re-inspire myself in the personality space. Because on one hand, it's like, I kind of mentioned it before actually, it's like, I've met actually the most amazing people of my lifetime through YouTube and through having a channel and talking about personality and whatever. Most awesome people through the most awesome walks of life. And on the other side, it's like the actual MBTI community is kind of, you know, sometimes I just hate them all. Not like any particular person. It's just like the essence of like being like in quote obsessed with personality. That is just very annoying. And so I kind of don't like to feed the monster. At the same time, there's so much valuable stuff in understanding cognitive process and the things that it contributes to. So I'm just, you know, noodling my way through how I want to basically address the things that I feel are worth addressing, and also, you know, not giving any attention to the things that I don't want to give attention to. If that makes sense. Yeah, you guys get it. Ah, New Zealand. Very nice. Yeah, kitchen. Oh man, so jealous. New Zealand looks awesome. Anyway, so yeah, you guys get it. I don't have to explain it any more than I have. But yeah, that being said, it's like I still want to talk about personality. I still want to talk about these different aspects. I still enjoy interacting with people who are invested in self-betterment and self-growth, because those are awesome conversations to have. And yeah, so I really appreciate that side. I appreciate the people who are willing to go through the steps of the ups and the downs and walk through the downs and just be transparent and honest about the process, because those end up being the best conversations and friendships overall. So anyway, Indy says he loves you, and yep, Indy, say goodbye to the people on YouTube. It's a very noodly noodle tonight. All right, guys, I'll see you soon. Bye.